Welcome Exiles, this is Prevailing and I'm here to give you a rundown on my Toxic Rain Trickster build. This is my first attempt at a build guide, so hopefully we get to the end of this in one piece. To get started, I'd like to share the table of contents for this humble video guide. The video is segmented and labeled for easy navigation. Feel free to use the timestamps to jump to the relative content you were looking for. Each of these main categories are further split into smaller segments for your convenience. Just check the video progress bar below or the timestamps in the description. And remember, I'm live on Twitch 6 days a week, so if you have questions or want to say hi, make sure to follow the link to my channel in the description or here posted on the screen. So why Toxic Rain specifically? Well, mainly because this build can carry you into maps on a 4-link. That's not an exaggeration. It clears really well and destroys bosses. A 5-link can comfortably get you into tier 10 maps. A very budget 6-link and moderate upgrades will get you into tier 16 red maps and have you killing up to Cyrus Awakener level 8. It's one of those builds that does everything well with low investment. And it's super fun. Let's briefly examine Toxic Rain first so we know the details regarding our Monster Slayer. It works in 3 stages. I've slowed down this clip so you can get a clearer idea of how it operates. The first is your initial attack. 5 arrows zoom upwards into the air, which then rain down around the targeted area. The next stage, as you can see, the arrows ensnare the enemies and slow them by 10% up to 60%. It also lays spores all over the ground. These are the important part of the skill because it's what we scale our damage with. The third phase is the pod explosion. These spores last for a duration before popping, dealing chaos and area damage. Another key thing to point out on this gem is that modifiers to projectile damage apply to this skill's damage over time effect. The goal with this build is to run through the enemies and fire the pods, trusting that these pods will clear the packs because they absolutely will. Our massive amount of evasion and dodge, as well as phasing and blind, are stacked layers of defense, making it a breeze to pass through enemies without being detected. Very rarely I found, while playing this build, that I got hit by anything. For our Ascendancy, we choose the Trickster, which is a shadow. This was an easy choice because of the huge damage boost and invaluable defensive mechanisms that jive perfectly with our build. The first point you want to pick up is called Patient Reaper, and this will help with the leveling process. Gives us a nice damage boost and incredible defense and utility all in one point. Considering the impact that this point has, I recommend picking up as soon as you feel comfortable, as early as Act 3 or as late as Act 5. Second point that we want to get from the labyrinth is prolonged pain. We benefit from pretty much everything in this node except for the poison. It's a very solid choice. I would pick this up between Act 6 and 8, again, whenever you feel most comfortable. The third point we want to get is Ghost Dance. This is very, very useful as well, very defensive. And I like to get this right before killing Kitava in Act 10. Our fourth choice for the Ascendancy is Escape Artist. This grants us more buffs and defenses per Ghost Shrouds, and we acquired those Ghost Shrouds with the previous point, Ghost Dance. This is just an overall very good node, easy choice, and I would get this whenever you can. I've made various versions of my tree and path of buildings so that you can have an easier time following the pathing for leveling. Nothing generally needs to be respect at the end unless you decided to go out of your way for something you felt might help you level better. My overview for leveling focuses on players using this as a league start or just generally anyone who doesn't have leveling gear available. If you do have leveling gear, I would recommend a Tabula Rasa and a Quill Rain, plus the other standard leveling items such as Wanderlust, Gold Rim, Karui Wood, etc. For those starting a new league with this build like I did, the next section is important. Ditch Viper Strike immediately. Purchase Caustic Arrow from Yina for 1 Wisdom Scroll. If you don't have a transmutation orb to buy a bow from Tarkley and Hillik, the nice guy, didn't drop you one, then talk to Tarkley and grab Cobra Lash as a reward. Link this to the lesser poison that you already have and play it for a few zones until a bow drops. If you don't want to mess around with Cobra Lash, you can start a ranger character and take the bow that the game gives you as a ranger and switch it over to your shadow after you kill Hillik with it. After the Mercy mission is complete, you can acquire Pierce from Yina as a reward. You'll also be able to purchase Mirage Archer in town. Link these two gems to Caustic Arrow and you'll be flying. After you complete your mission in the Mudflats, you're able to pick up a couple more gems. First, I would recommend getting Dash from Tarkley. It's a reward, so it's free. And then you can also pick up Contagion as a reward as well. Void Manipulation is another gem that we get as a reward for killing Brutus. We also pick up Clarity after we kill Brutus. Again, this is a reward. This is going to help with our mana issues. I would also recommend picking up a Withering Step. This one you're going to have to buy. You can get this after killing Brutus. It costs 1 transmutation orb. Before fighting Merveil, go back to town and get Essence Drain as a quest reward. This, in combination with Contagion, will help dish out more deeps against Merveil. We'll continue to use them until Act 3. Switch Pierce out of your main 3 link and add in Void Manipulation just for this fight. After the fight, go ahead and switch Void Manipulation and Pierce. Decoy Totems work nice here as well. Spell Totem linked with Wither as well, but Totem spells are not available to Shadow so early in the game. If you can buy them through trade or they happen to drop before you reach Merveil, they're a nice touch, but not necessary. Act 2, there's not a lot gem-wise, but we do want to get Skitterbots as a reward. This is going to be nice because none of the heralds really benefit us, but this does give us Chill and Shock, which increases our damage, and it's a nice little utility. You can keep using Caustic Arrow here. I changed to Toxic Rain when I started dealing with the bandits. The links here would be Toxic Rain, Void Manipulation, Mirage Archer, and if you happen to have a 4-link, Faster Attacks would make it feel nice, which you can pick up as a reward in Act 2. Toxic Rain doesn't feel great early because it relies on a lot of attack speed, but by traveling to Master Fletcher on the tree first, it's not as bad. Remember, you'll have to buy Toxic Rain from Yina in Act 1 for a transmutation orb. You can continue to clear with Caustic Arrow through all of the acts if you'd like, and use Toxic Rain for bossing. But if you do, I'd recommend picking up at least the lesser multiple projectiles for Caustic Arrow. When it comes to dealing with the bandits, this build doesn't benefit from anything that the bandits can provide, so I kill all of them for extra points. If you'd like, you can help Alira, as she will help you reach your resistance caps early in the game when you're starting off on a fresh league. Later on, you can respec into killing all bandits and getting those 2 extra points. In Act 3, you'll want to get Bane as a reward from Maramoa. Buy Despair from Clarissa and link these together ASAP. This will help massively against bosses and curse them at the same time. Then drop the Contagion and the Essence Drain. You don't need them anymore. Also, pick up Malevolence and start leveling it, as we'll need this ready to go when we get to maps. I highly suggest doing the library quest as there are many gems that we can benefit from. The reward for finishing the quest is Second Wind, which I would attach to your dash as soon as you can. While you're there, pick up Swift Affliction and Vicious Projectiles. Your 4-link will now consist of Toxic Rain, Mirage Archer, Vicious Projectiles, and Swift Affliction. Keep leveling the Void Manipulation for when you get to maps. If you have the sockets, pick up Spell Totem and Wither as well and link them together. I'd also highly recommend picking up Flesh and Stone. If you have the mana, I would start wearing this as soon as you can. And make sure you stay in Sand Stance. We are benefiting from the blind. In Act 4, I would do your first lab once you get to the waypoint in Crystal Veins. If you don't feel comfortable enough, waiting until Act 5 is respectable as well. By the end of Act 4, if you have the available links on your gear, you can grab greater multiple projectiles as a reward and attach it to Frenzy, Curse on Hit, and Despair. Doing this allows you to drop Bane. By Act 5, you are probably frustrated over mana. My best suggestion is to grab an Enduring Mana Flask. This is huge. It allows you to keep regaining mana even after your mana is at full. Massive quality of life, and I'd use it until maps. Anywhere between Acts 6 and 8, I'd recommend getting your second Ascendancy point, Prolonged Pain. As you proceed through Acts 6 through 8, using utility flasks such as Quartz, a second Quicksilver, or Jade, or even flasks that give resistances are going to help you proceed through the story. In Act 9, you can farm the Blood Aqueducts for a Tabula, but keep in mind they nerfed the drop rate a few weeks back. Act 10, I'd farm up a bit and do my third Ascendancy point before tackling Kitava. You could even level your character up between 68 and level 72 before you jump into maps. Transitioning into maps can actually be very simple with this build. Level 70, I had all 3 of my first lab points, and I was at about 3000 HP, which sounds like not that much, but as long as you cap your resistances, this evasion-based build will do quite well. Once you hit maps, I would really recommend upgrading your bow to a silver bow or a quill rain, ideally 5 or 6 linked. It's important to note that if you do get the silver bow, you're going to want to put Toxic Rain in this bow. The unlinked Quill Rain and the Tabula Rasa or corrupted 6-link chest piece is probably going to be a little more obtainable at the very beginning of maps for you instead of the 6-link silver bow, which works better. Then I would just go that route and then work your way up into getting a 6-link silver bow, because I think it does do a little bit better of a job than the Quill Rain does. I would recommend setting up your Frenzy to be Frenzy, Curse on Hit, Despair, and greater multiple projectiles. You can grab a Witchfire Brew if you'd like. I don't feel like this does that great of a job against bosses because you do not want to be standing next to the boss. This build is very much a run around and stay as far away from the boss build as you can. So it could work while you're clearing maps, but I would not recommend it. I would simply prefer casting the Frenzy and automating the curse instead. Keep in mind Witchfire Brew, however, does give you some damage over time, so it's not a bad flask. Recommended gem link setups for mapping are gone over in detail in the next section. Some other important flasks while you're getting into mapping, and this is key. You're going to want a life flask that removes bleeding. You're going to want to run with a jade flask. You're going to want an enduring mana flask until you can get Elrion rings, which we will explain later. Silver for onslaught if you don't have onslaught in your build yet, which you probably won't. You could also run a quartz, which is what I prefer to run with. Also keep in mind that if you don't have a Tabula Rasa, you don't have a 6-link, you don't even have a 5-link, you don't need to worry. This build carried me into yellow maps on a 4-link. I got my 5-link around tier 7, tier 8 maps. Started to feel a little bad on a 4-link, so I'd recommend getting a 5-link. The 5-link will carry you up until tier 10 maps. As soon as you hit red maps, it's going to start feeling a little bad. So once you get into red maps, that's when I would highly suggest getting a 6-link, whether it's the Tabula, a corrupted chest piece, or your bow. Our endgame 6-link is going to be Toxic Rain, Vicious Projectiles, Swift Affliction, Mirage Archer, Void Manipulation, and Empower. If you don't have an Empower right away, which you might not, you can have faster attacks in there. You could also maybe try a Conk Effect. However, as soon as you can get even a level 3 Empower, I would put that in there. The level 4 is a really nice upgrade. However, I would run with even a corrupted level 3 until you can afford a level 4. Our next gem setup is going to be Frenzy, Curse on Hit, and Despair. This is the setup for our Quiver. You are going to be putting Frenzy, Curse on Hit, and Despair only if we have the Maloney's Quiver, which gives us 3 sockets and automates the Frenzy for us. If not, I would not recommend putting these 3 together. I would recommend automating your Curse setup in another way, which is explained later. Our next gem setup is going to be Malevolence, Clarity, Flesh and Stone, and Enlighten. I would recommend leveling Clarity to a comfortable level so that your mana has no issues and that you'd have enough mana to continuously cast your skill while you are fighting bosses. You don't have to use an Enlighten if you feel like you don't need it, but I do like to put that there, that if you're having mana issues, the Enlighten is really going to help. Dash, Second Wind, and Withering Step. Multiple totems, Spell Totem, Wither, and faster casting. Cast while damage taken, and Immortal Call. Val Haste, Val Grace, and increased duration. If you have the extra sockets, if you do not, I just run with Val Haste with increased duration. Again, if you are shorter on links, depending on how you're setting up your gems, Val Haste on its own will do just fine. Now let's discuss our gear choices. This is going to be the bow that you want for endgame if you really want to push. Something along these lines is going to be expensive both to craft or to purchase. Socketing Toxic Rain into this bow, however, is very much worth the investment when you're ready. It boosts the level of Toxic Rain by 3. And remember, Toxic Rain, the gem itself, scales really well by simply leveling the gem higher and higher. Ideally, by the end, when you have all of this gear set up, you'll have a level 29 Toxic Rain. Keep in mind, you do not need this bow to complete in-game content. You can manage with a 6-link Quill Rain or, my preference, a 6-link Silver Bow. I was able to kill Cyrus Awakener level 6 on this bow and a combined build price of under 100 chaos, as well as blast through tier 16 maps. Upgrading your bow will be something you want to do if you want to make the content smoother and tackle harder bosses. Our first Quiver option is Maloney's Mechanism. This is amazing for automating our frenzy charges. As you can see, it triggers a socketed bow skill when you attack with a bow. This means that our frenzy gem, which is tagged as a bow skill, will automatically fire whenever we're attacking with Toxic Rain. When we link this to Curse on Hit and Despair inside the bow, because yes, it has sockets, you now have both your frenzy charges and Curse working on their own. I like this Quiver a lot because of that, but also because it gives you decent life and attack speed. That being said, a rare Quiver is better if you can rearrange your Curse and Frenzy. On a rare Quiver, we get Chaos Damage over Time multi, a higher life roll, a higher attack speed roll, and more resistances. Not only that, we can have an influence. You're free to choose whatever influence you'd like on your Quiver to benefit your build however you would like. This build is pretty flexible. I might want to recommend an Elder influence for easy frenzy charges. If you go with this, the frenzy charges only generate when you hit a rare or unique enemy. This means it's going to be sustaining frenzy charges very well during boss fights, but not so well during mapping. Your clear should be fine, however, to get away with this. You could also get a Hunter influenced ring that gives you curse enemies on hit with Despair if you choose a rare Quiver. This will help you automate your curse. You could also throw on a Witchfire Brew Flask. This will automate your curse as well. However, I don't recommend that simply because you do not want to be sitting next to the boss while you are fighting it. And if you are using the flask, you will need to be pretty close to the boss in order to have that curse affecting said boss. Your chest piece can be rare with higher life rolls if you'd like. You can go Carcass Jack for more damage. My favorite is Queen of the Forest because it gives us resistances, life, high evasion, and most importantly, it makes us really fast. Because I'm stacking evasion in my build, the reduced movement speed isn't a problem. If you've got high enough evasion mixed with a Jade Flask, this chest makes you extremely fast. Keep in mind, this does not have to be 6-linked because your bow is 6-linked. On gloves, you're able to get chaos damage over time multiplier again, which is very nice. Attack speed, high life, and high evasion are also good options. If you're building a life energy shield hybrid, you can pick an energy shield based glove, and again, you're going to want to look for the attack speed and the chaos damage over time multiplier. Boots, this is easy to obtain, a very solid choice all around. It's the Aziri's Step, gives you great evasion, 30 move speed, and the chance to dodge spell hits is huge. I choose the Vertex for my helmets. You could go with a rare, but this is, if you choose the Vertex, where I would socket my auras, because it gives you that nice +1. If you want a rare helmet, you'll have an easier chance of finding something that has the useful enchant. Toxic Rain fires an additional arrow. Finding the Vertex with that specific enchant is actually pretty tricky. You could run the lab over and over until you got it yourself, but I wouldn't recommend that. If you did go with the rare helmet, you could also craft enemies have -9% to chaos resistance. Just keep in mind you'll want high evasion or energy shield for a base helmet, depending on if you're going hybrid or not. The key thing with our amulet is the +1 to level of all chaos skill gems. The +1 to level of all dexterity skill gems works great too. Keep in mind this is boosting your active skill gems like Toxic Rain, not your support gems. This modifier is only available with the Hunter's Influence. An Onyx, Agate, or Amber amulet base will help you flesh out strength and intelligence issues you'll likely encounter with the build. High life roll, any resistances, and possibly some strength are things you want to keep an eye out for amulets, as well as damage over time multi. Anointment options could be Corruption for damage or Constitution for life, but you're free to pick what works for you. Ring base, I recommend Vermilion for the percentage life, or 2 stone to help max out your resistances. You might need strength if you're still lacking, and as always, getting a high life roll is important on both rings. What I'd like to point out though is the non-channeling skills have -9 to total mana cost. This can more than half your Toxic Rain mana cost if you have it on both rings. I went from a Toxic Rain skill that cost me 34 mana to a Toxic Rain that cost me only 16 mana. I must stress how important this is. It allows you to drop your mana flask. This is crafted mon only, remember, so you're going to have to unlock the recipe. My choice for belt base is the Stygian Vice so that you can get a jewel socket. This jewel socket is typically where I would put a jewel that gives us onslaught. A Hunter Influence will be hugely beneficial once again, although it is not necessary. If you do get the Hunter Influence, it provides us not only with increased chaos damage mod, but also a percentage life roll. Very big. If you're doing a hybrid, a crystal belt also works. If you can't access a Stygian, a leather belt will do just fine. Now on to flask choices. Dying Sun is amazing for this build. It gives us extra projectiles and extra AoE. You absolutely need this flask. Jade is really good, gives us more evasion. It's especially good if you're using Queen of the Forest. It kind of acts like its own little Quicksilver. Quartz Flask gives you phasing and more dodge. Quicksilver, if you can roll Adrenaline on this for extra move speed, you're going to be moving even faster. You definitely need a life flask. I would recommend something with bleed removal. You could also possibly throw in a silver flask if you don't have onslaught in your build. You could even throw in a sulfur flask, but I would recommend those last. Just please make sure that no matter what flasks you choose, one of your flasks has freeze immunity. Very important. As for jewels, Watcher's Eye is very nice. I recommend the damage over time multi while affected by malevolence. For other jewels, I would prioritize life mods, increased damage over time, and any attributes you may be missing. Don't forget about attack speed too. There are some great cluster options for this build, but I did not include them in the video due to the fact that Delirium is now over and it's unclear how obtainable the jewels will be, especially some of the more important mods like Wicked Paw. I will, however, include them in the Path of Building file if you are interested. Alright, that about sums it up. I hope I've been able to effectively knock some new information into that skull of yours. I apologize for any misinformation, any mistakes. If you have any questions about the build, please come by my Twitch channel. I'll be happy to answer your inquiries. Let's have a great Harvest League start. Hope to see you around. Remember to keep prevailing.